right, welcome to our next panel. Staging play, we're going to talk about video games and theater, precisely about how video games and participatory theater performances, what they have in common, where the difference is. We're going to explore them, discuss them. We also have a look on some material. We want to watch some trailers, and we have some awesome artists with us.
Yes, and this is where I come in. So thank you very much for joining in. And I would very much like to introduce one of our two wonderful artists that we're going to discuss the topic today with. And that would be Leoni Voegelin. Leoni has been a recent graduate of the MA program Spiel und Objekt at the Hochschule für Schauspielkunst Ernst Busch in Berlin, which is we have very long business cards. And she's also an Joscha Neumann fellow, and she is doing research and development of participatory theater pieces together with Anna-Vera Kelle as VERAVOEGELIN. And she will be showing us some of the work that she's done pre-COVID, and we'll be discussing ways in which that is similar to video games or not. So thank you very much for being here.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for introducing me. That was wonderful.
Also with us is Sophia Donderer. She's been working for the past 5 years at Studio Fizbin as a game designer. And Studio Fizbin is an independent game studio based in Berlin and Ludwigsburg. And you just released, or a few weeks ago, you released the, I think it's fantastic, Minute of Islands game. And Sophia is the lead game designer of it, so she will be able to tell us everything about it. We have plenty of questions to ask. And Minute of Island, I played it, I really liked it. It's basically a narrative adventure game, and I think it's about how hard it is to be a chosen one. Is that correct? And welcome.
Absolutely. Hi, and thanks for having me. And yeah, maybe we should just start with the trailer.
Yeah, let's have a look at the trailer.
Right in, I guess, yes.
Yeah.
4 brothers, bound by eternal purpose. They all broke at the same time. And a girl named Mo. She knows what must be done. When the blight first came, people began to panic. And now, the spores are taking hold of whatever remains. Mo's family is still here, however. She has been tasked to protect them. After all, she is the bearer of the Omni-Switch.
Minute of Islands.
So that is Minute of Islands.
Perfect. I do have some questions. So my background is from theater. I do teach in a theater school. And one of the things that I find particularly interesting with people that make single-player narrative-driven video games, as we have mentioned, is the question is, why did you decide to make it a video game instead of like making an animated movie? Like, what is the reason that you want people to have choices in the game?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's an interesting question. And I think it's mostly because it's more immersive, because Mo, our protagonist, is doing stuff you can understand, but you really don't want to do it. But in the game, you kind of have to, because you really are the protagonist in a way, but you can't control her, and you're really feeling her pain and her struggles. And yeah, I think it's really a really powerful tool to tell stories, because you're just not like, oh well, okay, sad story, bye, but you have actually to do all this stuff.
Mm.
Yeah.
you were mentioning that there's an interesting mix of roles that you have as a player, where to some extent you are the protagonist, but to some extent you're really not the protagonist because they're clearly different of you. And I was wondering, when you, in theater, we have very clear like roles for people. There's like directors, and then there's actors, and then there's the audience. And if you would have to use like theater, a theater language to describe what the role of the player would be, would you say they're more of a director or more of like an actor? Do they act out the story?
Yeah, sort of. I mean, it really depends on the game, but I will focus on our game. And I think when you start playing, you really think you are like the actor and sort of the director, because you still think you can influence things because you are moving around and do stuff. But there's a point really early where you can decide to take a bottle of wine, but then you realize that Mo has her own plans, and she just is, I have no time for it, and just put it back. And that's where the roles like switch a bit. And I think you're more like a spectator, maybe, because you can influence some things, but in the end, you never can change the result.
So it's a bit like you're exploring through the protagonist.
Yeah, mostly you're seeing everything through her eyes. You have like a narrator who is telling what she's thinking and feeling and stuff. So you really, it's a bit like reading maybe, because you know more about her than you can see, but you are not really her.
And then how do you, as a game designer, when you are in theater, when you're a playwright, you are supposed to tell the story through the actions of other people, that the audience will then kind of make their own mind out about it. But you're designing like problem spaces for people. How do you go about, like, is it something that you find interesting as a problem, or is it something that you want people to experience so that you tell something about a world or a character? Like, how do you go about designing these problem spaces?
Yeah, again, it depends on the game, but for Minute of Islands, it was mostly, I was thinking, okay, I know how Mo is and how she should feel, and we want to create a space where the player feels kind of the same. So, for example, she is the chosen one, but she really struggled with that, and she is not really strong or anything, so she can't jump very high, or she is really slow, and she is some things are too heavy for her, too high up, and things like that. So we really focused on the whole world. It's more like our world building is like the inner world of Mo. More. Yeah.
And it's funny that you mentioned world building, because it's in the way we teach, it's a word that we kind of circumvent to not really. And I think it's something that might come up later on in discussion as well. So usually when you design theatrical experience, it's more about like the individual struggles. And this is like very broad, obviously, and there's many different ways to do theater, which we'll also touch on later on. But usually the standard template for narrative design would be that you like follow a protagonist through a world, and world building kind of works a little bit different in that sense for video games, and it's something that's used a lot when you design video games, and it's used kind of very little, or at least I have heard people use the word very little in a theatrical context. So maybe you could tell us a little bit how the different lens that you put on when you say you're building a world that you navigate through as a player, as opposed to just like having narrative beats.
It's hard. Okay.
I know that was kind of convoluted. Sorry about that.
I mean, first of all, we had our story, and we're like, okay, we had those narrative beats, and so should we design everything around it? And then, I mean, there are more lenses than only the narrative, because you also have to find like something. It should stay interesting for the player, so it has to get a bit harder with the time and stuff. And also, you have to create the world the player like understands and knows how to do stuff, and has to feel really clever, because we don't explain it, but you're like, okay, we do explain it by building our levels. So it's like we put like markers for, okay, here you can go, but you really shouldn't. You shouldn't see them and say, they put that to help me, but just like, okay, I'm navigating through this, and I do. We try to make the players do what we want them to do, but without them noticing. Mostly, yeah.
They're trying to manipulate people.
Yeah, that's basically what we do most of the time.
I remember one riddle, and I didn't feel that clever when trying.
Yeah,
to
then
solve
we
it.
failed.
But that's something else.
Yeah.
Spoilers? Or?
No, it was just hard.
Okay.
I don't want to say anything else about it.
What we've seen in the trailer definitely is how beautiful the world looks. And so one of the big differences that we have in theater, we usually don't have, depending on the budget that you have, but you usually don't have like enormous amounts of different stages that people go through. So there's a lot of like abstraction that we use to tell stories in like a very reduced stage set. And here in video games, you have the possibility to really have the environment, as you were describing, speak. How did you, like, what was your main thing? Did people start drawing environments, and that's how kind of you started defining the action space and the conflicts and the different things that are happening? Or did the narrative kind of design that?
Yeah, sort of both of them, but mostly it was like, we knew, okay, so in Middle of Islands you are visiting several islands, like 5, 6, I'm not sure. But then we knew, okay, there are a few things that has to happen on this island, and then we started to put like the things where the important story beats and whatever would be happening, and then our artists draw things, and then we were like, oh, that's cool, we could use it back. So it was back and forth, and it's really, I mean, we have been about, I think, 20 people sometimes, and everybody just put in their ideas, and then we were like, it fits, if we adapt it a bit, we can do it like this, and it was really I don't know, we were just talking a lot, because we all had the vision in our head of the story and what we wanted to tell.
And would you say that's a bit like rehearsing? Like where you come together and you try stuff out and then you look at it?
Yeah, of course, because we have like a first version, and then we have a second, and 10th and 20th, and like, there's a lot. I mean, we did like material for 5 games doing that, but it's just, you just keep the important stuff.
But I guess one big difference is that your production times are very different. So how long did you work on Minute of Islands?
We worked on it about 3 years.
Okay.
But it's really, it really depends. And like I said, it was much bigger before, but we had to shrink it permanently because, we don't have endless time.
One very interesting thing that I thought about that was also quite visible in the trailer is how close you are to the protagonist in most of the scenes. Like there's, was that like, what sort of choice, why did you make that choice? Because usually you have like a much more wide angle view on most of the landscapes so that you I think there are several reasons, but one is that usually we have those outlines and a lot of things happening in the screen the whole time. So we had to make sure that you always see the important stuff and see more. And also it's because you are really in like her shoes, she can't see that far. So it's just you see what she's seeing, and we do have a lot of camera action in our game too. So when she is looking at something, the camera moves right there and goes back, and and it's also so the player doesn't get lost because you just see what you should see at this moment. That is kind of interesting that you mentioned that, because one of the main things that comes up, or that came up like a couple of years ago when everybody was discussing VR and the similarities or differences to theater. And one of the things that really didn't quite work out with theater's streaming was that in theater, you as an audience have the choice where you're going to look. And as a director, you can very much play with this choice. Like, how do you draw attention? It's also something that, as an actor or an actress, it's something that you're learning. Like, how can you draw focus from people? And here you have like technical systems that do that for you, or story beats that do that for you.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we still, when we are drawing the background, I think we still do the same. And they're like, this is more important, so give it a brighter color, for example, no? Like that one. And yeah, but we are using the camera much more because it's like, okay, we mostly know where the view will be. So.
And as a game designer, would you say that you are like a director, where like you see the different things and you make these decisions of, no, people should really focus on this one now, or people should be able to do, like, how would you describe your role?
Yeah, I mean, we had a game director actually, so we do have the role. But yeah, when I was designing puzzles or stuff, I still am doing this because I have to know, okay, first you have to realize this part, and then you have to make the connection, and how do I explain it to the player by just building the stage, more or less. So yeah, sort of it's the role of a director, I think.
And I have one last question. This is actually quite exciting to be able to like compare like structural stuff. And so one of the things that we talk about a lot in our school is like when you enter a scene, and then you kind of, as an actor, you're supposed to know like, where are you coming from? Where do you want to go? And what is the thing that's holding you back? And that is kind of how you structure this. This is very like basic stuff. Usually you become a bit more artistic with this over the course of like staging a play. But is there something similar? Like when you say that you design puzzles, do you have like similar lenses or ideas where you're like, okay, what do people that play this know? What is going to be the thing that is going to be communicated with this?
Yeah, of course. I mean, when you enter a scene, you should immediately see like the problem and know, okay, so that's what I have to do, and then you can go further and do other stuff. But in your head, you still know, okay, at the end of this, that's where I want to go. And yeah, we also do like, well, yeah, I forgot what I wanted to say. But
don't worry. Probably. Yeah. Cool. So thank you very much. This has been incredibly interesting to have like the different types of structures. And I feel like there's a lot of similarities. I mean, the words are maybe different, but the way we apply like basic design fundamentals seems to be quite similar.
Yeah. I guess now we get the chance to see something else and to compare it a bit to each other and find some differences and what they have in common. And maybe we can even talk a bit about how translate one thing to the other thing, but I think we have some more to show, right?
Yes.
Of Futopolis.
Yeah.
Yes, there is also a trailer which we can have a look at now. I
think it's coming right up now.
A warm welcome to everybody to First World in Motion online game jam, which is a collaboration between Amaze and VLive.
Four brothers, bound by eternal purpose. They all broke at the same time.
Trailer. There's one video that's called Futopolis. We're just quickly checking with the... Oh, so you didn't copy it? I heard the music when you
I haven't been able to
So now
experience it.
I have to explain, but I hear myself twice.
Yeah.
Which is a bit tricky. Okay, so I try to explain. So it was, the background is more a theater background, but we designed the game, or you can also call it as a simulation of society, where it was about the justice and the distribution of justice.
Resources.
Yes,
Both.
Verteilungsgerechtigkeit.
Ah,
Oh.
yes.
Distributional, yeah, something like that. So you had a little society, which was played by the people who participated in the theater piece, if you want to call it like this. So there were 60 people, and they came into the space, and they got a role they could enact. And then they were different actors of this society and had their own agencies. And so we only designed the setup and the structure of the game, but it was not scripted what would happen next. But it was that all the actors had different knowledge, pieces of knowledge on how is this society working. So, and then we had like a government, it was really like a society. We had a government, we had 2 factories, and we had a press, a kiosk, a school, and some private investors, which were not really clear what they do, but you could all figure it out, or yes, just play it. And then the people in the space would actually do the play or decide.
They would play it out.
Yes, they would play it out. And then you see what turned out in the end.
So would you call it, so what is it, if you have to decide, is it a game, a simulation, a theater performance, or all of it together?
Well, I think all of it together, but...
It's great.
Yes. Yes.
All right.
You did bring some stuff, so we can give an idea of what people were having to do. I'm very excited about this because I played it.
But it's a bit sticky because, so I will just distribute this.
Yes.
Because as I mentioned, we had 2 factories in the society, and their job was, so the government was getting the resource. I mean, they, that's mine. Collected it, and then the factory 1 had to buy the resource, and the resource was sugar. And the factory 2, which we are enacting now, was in charge of make it smaller. And
refining the resource.
Yes.
How did you decide who starts where? Or was that...
Who starts where?
Yeah, who gets which job to begin with?
The people decide by themselves. So we had like a pool of roles, and we asked like who want to be this or that, or they just entered and took one and put it as a sticker, and then they entered the space and started to read what or have a look what is on the desk and what is there, and then they start to act, or I mean not act but to play kind of. And then they soon figured out like, okay, my job is to make this smaller, but I don't have the sugar, so I have to go to the government and get the sugar. And the government was like, oh shit, we have to get the knowledge from the school. Okay, so they went to school, and so it was a whole circle, and yes, all was dependent on each other.
So now we can make some money.
Yes, you can make some money if you make it small.
Okay.
Then you can put it in this little boxes, because that was
like this.
Yes, like this. It's very loud.
There will be so loud.
It reminds me of this book Bullshit Jobs by David Graeber.
Yes.
Is it too loud?
We can stand it, I think.
Oh, it's working.
But at the same time, I could do this all day. I feel like it's very easy manual labor.
That's nice.
Probably not very well paid. Yeah. Very grating.
Yes, very thick. But there was also one person who was the leader of the company, and soon the factory worker figured out that this is a shit job. So they started to overthrow the leaders and start to make the factory working as a collective.
Ah,
Stuff
okay.
like this. Yes.
They have plenty of money.
Yeah. That would be great.
So basically, it's a very playful experience, right? Was it the idea from the beginning to have something based on, and we're talking about game mechanics here, right? was that the basis of it, to create something based on game mechanics, or was it more like about how to represent the topic of distribution and justice and social interaction?
Yes, so the question was how can we make it, how can we make that the people who are playing it, or like the audience can experience it. So, and that's where we decided we want to have it as a game, so the people really can participate and like experience it by themselves, in terms of if they make this decision, they are in charge of the decision, and then they figured out, okay, this was maybe not the smartest decision, but I get the money now, so I'm the rich one. But then they figured out, okay, I'm the rich one, but now the other one are mad at me, so we have to sort things out differently. So it was really the intention to make it as an experience, to show this topic.
And what I find super interesting is that the game keeps going on, right? But the people will change.
Yes, exactly. So after about 60 minutes, 60? 1 hour, there was a change. So the people who were playing this situation, they put everything down and left it like it was at this state of the game, and wrote some tips or hints for the next generation. And then the next 60 player came and took the tools and the factory workers start working. And also because someone else already touched it, they were not so much afraid to start. So in the second round, they always started quite faster. And then they started and just did the same things, or they did it differently. But they can read like, those other... I mean, I also wrote this, and I have it on a sheet. You can have it.
So they telling, okay.
So this is the sheet the people who left wrote down for the next generation.
So they telling me here how many coins are left? 9 in this case, and they went on the street for more money. That's very progressive. And they ate, and they drank, and they slept, and they worked a lot. And the government didn't do anything. That's interesting.
And so
it's a bit like a video game.
So it also happened that the press was walking around and distributed some media, like newspapers. And so
that's the strike.
they called out for, okay, we have to strike now because nothing is happening. Yes.
Wow.
So a lot of
was this played sitting down? Like were people sitting and discussing?
No. It was a whole room full of a lot of people, like, and it was really fun and loud as well. But it was okay. And I think because of the people had their role to fit in or to fill out or to play out, they were also not afraid to take part or to act. Take action. Yeah.
How long did it last? The whole thing?
The whole thing? We most of the times we played 3 rounds, and after the third, everything was like on the they destroyed everything. And the capital was all at the kiosk, and they had a monopoly, or it was all at the private investors, because you could also rent apartments, and these were in a VR, so you can that's why they say, okay, we slept, we ate, because you can really get these things. At the kiosk you could eat, there you can have your apartment in the VR, but it was, in the end, it was...
So society didn't work out when people kind of negotiated it themselves?
Yeah, I don't know why.
I don't know why.
We planned it to work perfectly, but they just don't distribute. So equal. I don't know. But it was fun.
And do I have to be part of it? So when I come around and the experience is going on, do I have to play it, or can I sit on the sideline and just watch it like I watch someone playing a video game, for example, or as I would just go to the theater or opera?
No, you cannot.
Why not?
Because we decided against, because we thought that it should be an experience and the people should participate and do it as a whole group. And I think it would have disturbed the flow of the game very much if people were just on the side watching the others and maybe judging, or I don't know. It's just that if you have somebody watching you, like physically, like there, then you are not as free maybe to play out these roles. I think so.
Yeah.
And so we decided against it. And I mean, there were people who said, oh, can I just sit there and have a look? And we were like, no, but you can participate. And then they said, okay, but give me something that's not too crazy. And we're like, okay, go to the factory. And sometimes, I mean, in the factory they had shifts. And you could have a break. But some people were just, no, I have to work, I have to work, I have to work. They did not stop work. And yes, I don't know, their choice.
Sounds like real world to me.
There's something interesting in reenacting, I think. Reenacting something that you kind of do or you kind of don't experience in the real world, but now you have the power to change things, I feel. And I was wondering, you decided to tell like a story that is not based on like real politics or real events, but more in an abstract way. Would you be interested in like making a much more, you know, I mean, theater is often very real and gritty and dirty and, you know, getting down to the meat of people. Why do you think video games are more fluffy in that way?
I think there are video games that are doing the same, but for us it just was, we wanted like a personal story. Everybody in the team could really relate, so we more focused on the feeling for the players should get. And I think sometimes it's hard because video games are not, for me video games are art, but not for everyone. So if you do something something that could be difficult, it's really hard in video games because the people are, oh no, you can't say that, and they don't understand your message or something. So I think most of the people are a bit more careful with video games.
I don't know when you've last been to the theater, but theater audiences are very, you know, I mean, they're like, oh, you can't do that. They leave the room, and then so.
Yeah, but I think it's more common sense that theater is art, and for video games it's still a long way to go, sadly. But yeah, it will change, hopefully.
And do you feel like there was something personal? Like, I'm just trying to like switch things around in the way that you've told this like large-scale meta-society discussion. Did you have like, what were your personal choices when you designed this problem space?
Well, I don't know if I understood the question right. My personal, I liked we had an assembly line, but I think that's not the question.
Well, I mean, you choose to have an assembly line, yeah.
Okay, so what the personal choice was, I don't know, to keep them busy all the time and to make them comfortable that they always, that they always can do something if they want to do something, and to negotiate in their role, so they don't have to be XY and I will do this. No, they have their role. I'm now the factory worker, and as a factory worker, I can say this. So that was very important to me, I think. Yes.
Would you be interested in designing like more large-scale multiplayer things at some point?
Yeah, of course. I mean, it's really interesting when you don't have to design everything by yourself, but just open like a playground and observe what the players are doing, mostly like you did. So it's, I would love to one day.
Sounds more like an open world game to me. What would you say from a game designer perspective?
Yeah, sort of. I mean, it's like I played Factorio some time again. It's like a bit like that, but with multiplayer and stuff. And I think it's interesting because people can communicate, but in games it's still, I think, sometimes a bit because it's online. The people are more, they say what they think and they are not very polite, and so multiplayer games online are still, you can't just say, okay, you go out,
Yes.
and it's hard to control. But I would really love to do multiplayer games because, like I said, the most interesting is if your players can create their own world, they can explore it, and
I
do
think
amazing stuff.
also what, like we always had the space afterwards to let the people, if they were, I don't know, did not feel that much comfortable, or I don't know, some of the government were like, I was just, I don't know, and so they could afterwards come together and discuss things, and that was like a very important part of the whole situation, even though it was after the game, because then the people could discuss, oh, I did that, but I'm sorry, I took all the money of you. I did not want it, but it happened. So they could afterwards talk about what happened, and this is not so easy in online games.
Yeah, that's really cool because personally I am a bit afraid of joining online games because I don't know the people and I can't see them. It's just a name. I'm a bit afraid of them, but yeah.
Do you think it would be possible, though, to translate something like this kind of theatric performance experience you experience in one room with so many people around you to a game, an online game?
Yeah, of course, I think because they're the mechanics, I think you can just translate them to the online thing. It's just the communication part you have to redesign a bit, but I think it would work, yeah.
But I think one of the things, you said that just now, this idea of like you don't have control or you're having control is like is a very interesting thing, because it's also something that in theater you work with this, you kind of want to control everything, but you also kind of want to make every time you play the piece a little bit different. And so I find this very interesting, how the two of you are dealing with control, like how much can you control how the player is doing stuff, or how much can you, or do you want to control how people are playing your thing? Yeah, we just got a sign that we should stop.
You don't have control regarding the time,
we're out of control in a weird way. So yeah, I guess thank you very, very much for coming and for talking about your wonderful projects. And then is there something that we can play from you anytime soon?
I mean, you can play Minute of Island
Okay.
out. You've seen in the trailer. Yeah.
And how about you? Can we experience Futopolis at some point?
Well, 60 people now, but maybe next year.
Okay.
I don't know.
Well, I have some more work to do.
Yeah, perfect. Okay, thank you all for watching.